and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Good evening. This is the council meeting for January the 27th. And if all could rise so that we could have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mrs. Ross Marin, please read the roll call.
Mr. Arnold. Here. Mrs. Fenderbosh.
Here.
Ms. Gentry.
Here.
Mr. Cross.
Here.
Mr. Shamir.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Zuber.
Here.
Mayor Spetzel. Law Director Ebert.
Here.
Finance Director Crossy.
Here.
Public Works Director Liskovic.
Here.
Thank you. The mayor is out ill today. Does anybody have any objection of him not being here? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to the approval of the minutes. So we have November 25th, December 9th, December 16th. Mr. Law Director, can we have
I would have separate ones.
have separate ones?
Yes, I
Okay.
would.
So November the 25th, are there any corrections or additions to this particular one? Seeing none, it will stand as published. December 9th, 2024. Does anybody have any changes or updates for this particular minute? Seeing none, it will stand as published. And the final one is December the 16th, 2024. Any council members have any changes or additions to the minutes? They will stand as written and approved. Thank you. Correspondence. Mrs. Ross Marin, do you have any correspondence to share with us this evening?
Yes, I received a thank you note from Elsie Robinson, and Elsie was the one who celebrated her 100th anniversary, and Mayor Spetzel had issued a proclamation on that for her honor. And she just said to please extend my appreciation to friends and council members and to Mayor Spetzel and our city council for this honor. I wanted to thank.
And then the very last part I thought was very sweet. She said,
Oh.
make Avon Lake beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Elsie. Any other correspondence anybody wants to share? All right, then we'll move along. Yes, sir. Go right ahead, Mr. Shabir.
I've received several phone calls over the past week with respect to the previous mayor's minute that was discussed in the last meeting. And I can tell you most were displeased with what was said. And I've gone back and I actually had not listened to the mayor's minute the previous week. So I've actually gone back and taken a look at that. You know, I spent probably close to 4.5 hours talking to different residents. And then I also reached out to Mr. Phillips to have a conversation. And, you know, we're a democracy. And the foundation of our democracy is civic and civil discourse. Now, civility has a major place in this thing. Now, civility goes both ways. Civic discourse also is what we're about. When there are issues, there should be venues where people have the opportunity to have dialogue. Dialogue means communication, conversation, trying to understand what it is and why it is that people are saying and or doing what they're doing. I unfortunately don't see the city administration or council opening dialogue with residents. I am an example of that. I tried for 2 years to have dialogue with the city administration and the council. Effectively, I was pushed aside. That's why I ran for council. You know, frustration is not an easy thing, but when we get frustrated, we should still remain civil. Civility is very important, as much as civic discourse. You know, I have been on council for over a year now. I can tell you one thing, one fundamental thing. I still do not receive information that I request. On December 27th, Mr. Phillips showed up at my door with a packet of information that I had nothing or heard nothing about. I received it and I went through it. What I realized is since I've been on council, when I request information of the city, of Mr. Esbor, he goes to an outside lawyer, Mr. Todd Davis, to ask permission or advice on what he can send the city councilman who is on council. So I found that quite disturbing, that I, as a council person, still do not receive information, at least as it pertains to ALERG or CHARA. You know, in the same token, the mayor, when it came down to the implosion, he said, I can't do anything. They've already made up their mind. They're going to do an implosion irrelevant of what the data or the modeling showed. Yet, he can have an external dialogue towards Mr. Zimmerman or Mr. Phillips. Again, it is not civic discourse. Civic discourse is our job. It is the job of the folks that sit behind this podium to have dialogue. You're not better. We are not an autocracy. An autocracy is somewhere else. This is a democracy, and we are going to keep it as that. As such, I find it quite disturbing when people do not have the forum to have civic discourse, that we come and bash them. That is unacceptable. Thank you.
Excuse me, right now, I'm sorry, you're out of order right now. So I thank you for sharing your concerns, Mr. Shamir, so that everybody understands when topics come to council, the back and forth and the discussion that between even us and our consultants occurs in committees. You just had a committee meeting. Out of the committees, then it comes up to the CCM, where we prepare for the next council meeting. And during the CCM and during the council meeting, the job of our council here is not the back and forth. There are other times for that. There's other forums, which I'm going to mention. What is going on up here is moving the business of the city along. The times to have the extra forums is, for example, Mr. Shamir has a ward meeting, correct? Once a month for yours. Correct. And I know with my own, I don't have them once a month. I go out to the specific streets, whether it's an HOA or whether it's a non-HOA, like on Beck, and we take care of the situations right then and there that are affecting them. Every council person has a different way of communicating with the constituents. One of the things that we're moving forward, which those of you that were at the Chapter 220 review session saw, was that there's going to be a form at the end of the day that we would like to have out so that if people want to know more about a topic, they can write down what they'd like to have, how to get a hold of them, and Mrs. Ross-Marin is going to be collecting those. She will then be moving that information to either administrative staff person or to a council person here so that we can continue the discussions. But during the council meetings is not really for back and forth. It's for moving the city business along. I welcome other people's conversations that they'd like to speak to this topic. And I see that no one does want to speak to this topic, so we will move along, if we could, to our reports. Mr. Mayor is not here, so the next report comes from the council president. I have several things on the agenda. The next CCM is going to be February the 3rd at 7 p.m. in these chambers. The next council meeting will be February the 10th at 7 p.m. And what I would like to mention that a lot of you have seen already in social media and in the newspaper is an event that Mr. Remy was here earlier a week ago, or maybe it's been 2 weeks, and it has to do with the Harlem Wizards. And this is something that's going on that is a community event that's going to be benefiting the schools and small businesses. It's called Anchoring Our Community Together for Kids, the Harlem Wizards Community Game. It's a fundraiser for the Avon Lake Athletics and Extracurriculars. It will be February the 17th at the high school. Pre-game festivities will be at 5:30, and the game starts at 7. The event isn't supporting the basketball program specifically, but all Avon Lake athletic activities, which would be math teams, chess club, across the board. There's no bias toward one or toward the other. And what I thought was really interesting was their purpose. The event is about more than a basketball game. It's a unique chance to support Avon Lake during a critical moment. It's an opportunity for all of us to help ensure our students have continued access to activities that develop teamwork, leadership, and personal growth and benefit our community for years to come. They're going to warm up with the Wizards. You could do that. Just arrive early. You can purchase a Wizards jersey. You can go out there on the floor with them. The main event features them, and they're going to be playing against teachers, administrators, staff from St. Joe's, from the public school district, from St. Raphael's. They're going to be doing high-five dunks, interactive play. You're going to get to meet the players. If you want to know more about it, and the tickets are $15 to $40 each, and my husband and I, we've purchased our tickets, go to avonlakeanchoringcommunity.com. Again, that's avonlakeanchoringcommunity.com for more information. And then something that's going to come up through each of our meetings, each of us are chairing a committee of council. Feeding up through some of those committees are boards and commissions. And there's some openings for the mayoral selection to those boards and commissions. And when we come to each of ours, those of us that have those boards and commissions will be speaking to it. Are there any questions for Council President? All right, then we'll move along to the Law Director.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no report this evening.
Thank you. Then we'll move along to the Finance Director.
Thank you, Madam President, and I have no report for this evening.
Thank you. We'll move along to the Public Works Director.
Thank you. Actually, do have a couple things to report on this evening. First and foremost, if you haven't been aware of it, there is a roadway issue on Walker Road by Armour as a result of a service line from a water main that had leaked over a duration, caused the roadway to heave. Had a meeting with Regional Water. They're going to be conducting emergency roadway repairs starting tomorrow in that area between Armour and Avon Point. The plan is to have the roadway repaired and restored and reopened by the end of the week. As part of this process, for safety of traffic and motorists, the stretch of Armour between Walker and Spinnaker will be closed. Traffic will be detoured Spinnaker out to Avon Point that way. And the reason being is they're going to be using portable traffic light setups to manage one-way traffic through there. And they felt it was a safety issue with that intersection being so close to where the lights need to be set up that would be the best way to manage it. They're putting together press releases. I know I've forwarded or had them forward everything to Stephanie so that she can put it on our stuff and move along with that. Additionally, just an update on the city's deer culling program. USDA has fulfilled the 40 tags that we initially issued them, and at this point we're going to be done for the season. They're pretty much booked out for the year, so we're going to take that, we're going to reevaluate and have some further discussions on what that program looks like moving forward into the next seasons. Street tree trimming got delayed a little bit due to extreme cold weather temperatures last week, but we're moving forward with that, and there will be a map coming before the end of the week just to highlight the general area of where we're going to be working. And then lastly, our staff had the ability today to work with the Historical Society and the power plant to salvage the light poles that were donated to the city. We were able to get all those pulled off that site, and we're prepping them for storage tomorrow, but we were able to get all those poles moved off the site in one piece, in good condition, and we did it safely and got it done in the course of our day today. And that's all I have today.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Liskovic? Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. I want to follow up a little bit on what John is talking about and just let the community know that there is an ongoing effort. Today was the light posts in front of the the power plant, the main building, that there is an ongoing effort of a group of residents that came together that are looking to save as much as we can of the old power plant for an eventual public display, either in a public parkland or some sort of a museum setting or a combination of the two. So I know that Tony Tomanek with the Avon Lake Historical Society, the Avon Lake Historical Preservation Commission, members of ALERG, and former members of ALERG, and members of the community and the library have been working on this. And so when that building comes down in a couple of weeks, month or so, whatever it's scheduled for, just know that there is quite a bit that is going to be preserved and saved for the public to experience and see. And I know that Mr. Tomanek is going to be putting out an article in one of the local publications that's going to have the list of all the things that we've been able to save so far, and the things that we're still looking to do. So we are aware of the history of the building itself and the story that it helps to tell for the city of Avon Lake. And they're working very hard to preserve it. And I thank you and your staff today for the assistance that you had on that. So there's more to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cos, I do have a question, because some of the residents are wondering if we can't keep the columns, are we able to duplicate them somehow, or duplicate a facade that looks similar to the front facade? Has that discussion come up?
That has not. That sounds like a pretty big project. We're looking to get as much as we can out of that building and preserved before the wrecking ball strikes. So we're looking to get as much as we can out. Once we have that, we'll take stock of what we have, and whatever can be recreated, reproduced to help tell that story. I'm sure that we'll look at all options.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Cos? Seeing none, then we are going to go on to the standing committees, beginning with Building and Utilities. Mrs. Gentry.
Yes, for Building and Utilities, we have two items on the agenda tonight. One is the acceptance of the NOPEC grant, and the other is a resolution supporting the Ohio Municipal League, I might have messed that up, OML, their challenge to AT&T. The STAR program is going to be kicked off in February, and then our next meeting will be on February 19th at 6 p.m. in council chambers.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Gentry? Then we will move on to Mr. Shamir with SERP.
We've got a number of items on the docket this evening. First is we've got the Digital Media Commissioner seats that are available and open, and we're accepting resumes. So if anyone is interested, I would ask to forward your resumes to Ms. Valerie Rosmarian at Avon Lake City Hall. The term is 3 years, and the focus is laws focusing on FCC regulations, copyright and internet regulations, technology relating to media communication, marketing and social media, education and nonprofit, consumer affairs relating to cable access and internet communication, and historic understanding of the Avon Lake and Avon Lake City TV. So this is the digital media commissioner seats that are available. The next item is the Parks and Recreation Commissioners. Again, that is a 3-year term as well, and those commissioners would be dealing with rules, regulation, and policies governing all public parks and facilities. And again, if anyone is interested, please forward your resumes to Ms. Valerie Rosmarian. And the next item is at CRP, the meeting that we had today. Just before this meeting, we discussed the Avon Lake Municipal Landfill closure progress. There were discussions on how to move that project forward. I can't get into any more details than that. I would recommend anyone that has interest to attend the next CERP meeting next month. We also discussed the Avon Lake Play Space progress status. That is something that will be discussed at the CERP meeting on a monthly basis. And that's all that I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Shamir? Seeing none, we're going to move along to Mr. Arnold, Economic Development.
Thank you. Hopefully you can hear me. I don't have a microphone in front of me. But no official report tonight. There is some vacancies for the Community Reinvestment Area Housing Council, the CRA. There's 3 vacancies. They meet on an as-needed basis right here in council chambers. Anyone interested in that can forward their resume over to Valerie Rossmarin. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Arnold? And I turned on the microphones around you, Mr. Arnold. Hopefully that will help. Okay, the next one is Finance, Mr. Zuber.
Madam President, we have 5 items on the agenda, most of which were discussed in detail at the collective committee meeting last week. A lot of them are beginning year things that have to be done on a yearly basis. The one item is the Resolution 2520, submitting a question of renewal of the tax levy for purposes of providing expenses for the city of Avon Lake pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 5705-19A. That is the renewal of the property tax levy. This has been an ongoing levy. I think this, as long as I've been on council over 30 years now, we have had this levy ongoing. It's a 1 mil levy or 1.5 mil levy. This is just a renewal, collects just under $1.1 million. And this is basically for us to refer it to the electorate for a renewal. And so that will face the question to the voters in the May. And I'll go more into detail at the time of the reading.
Thank you. Mr. Zuber, just for clarity for the audience that's watching this at home, if you look at your tax bills, if this should pass, it's not going to increase the city portion because this is a renewal of what's already in place. Correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It's a renewal of the levy.
Okay, just so everybody understands. Any questions for Mr. Zuber? Seeing none, we're going to go on to Mr. Smith with Human Resources.
Thank you. I have no official report. Human Resources Committee will meet on February 10th at 6 o'clock. Additionally, Civil Service has a meeting scheduled for Monday, February 3rd at 4:30. Regarding Human Resources, just to kind of give everybody a little bit of a heads up, I'm anticipating a couple issues regarding the courts as well as a firefighter appointment up in the near future. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Smith? Then we'll move along to Mr. Cos with Public Safety and Health.
Thank you, Madam President. I do not have any official report. The next meeting of the Public Safety and Health Committee would originally be set for Tuesday, the February the 18th. However, since that is the day after the President's Day holiday, I think all of the Monday committee meetings are being moved to that Tuesday. So I'm going to have to send an email to the folks on the committee, Ms. Gentry and Mr. Smith, and see if we can come up with a date or time that works for the committee. And I will then, once we get that date set, I will forward that on to the rest of council and the public. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Cos? We'll move along to Public Service, which is what I chair. The next Public Service meeting is going to be February the 5th in these chambers at 5:30 p.m. Tonight we have 2 items on the agenda, which I will go into later whenever we approach them. We did discuss them at the CCM having to do with the agricultural property. That comes up every 5 years. Any questions for Public Service? Okay. Planning Commission, Mr. Smith?
Nothing to report. There will be a Planning Commission meeting on February 4th, I believe. As far as I'm aware, I think there'll be items for that. And that's at 7 o'clock. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Smith? Seeing none, we're going to go on to the Zoning Board with the mayor. I don't have his report, but what I do have is that there is an opening on the Zoning Board of Appeals. It is a 5-year term. The Zoning Board of Appeals determines the viability of all zoning applications within the city limits, including hearing arguments for zoning exceptions and deciding the viability and merit of the zoning considerations. So basically, if it doesn't fit within the square box of the code, then as a resident, you can come and ask your neighbors who are part of the zoning board if there could be an exception that's made. They meet monthly, excuse me, except December at 7 p.m. in these chambers. And it's always the fourth Wednesday of the month. Are there any questions? Thank you. Now we're going to move along to Mr. Shamir with Parks and Rec Commission.
Nothing to report.
Thank you, sir. Any other special committee reports? I know that the Tree Commission is going to be meeting February the 12th at 6 p.m. and we're going over our additional code changes. Okay. With that, I'm going to take just a moment before audience participation. We have some news. On this floor, the men's room is now, the middle section is now available. The sink doesn't have running water, but I'm told that the commode does work, so you don't have to go downstairs. The women's, because we have a few people in our audience, and the women's is working on this floor at the far end. So I wanted just to take a moment for that. Audience participation. If you would like to speak to something that is on tonight's agenda, please come forward and state your name and the city that you're from. Thank you. Sir.
Gerald Phillips, Avon Lake. I want to talk about the flock system.
Thank you.
Mr. Zimmerman has come before this board and he got public records requests that shows for the last 5 years there were 46 incidents at the intersection of 83 and Walker. But just like I was up here before, like Avon, when they did a request, they went to ODOT and they had to do a crash report and there were incident report, and they list all the different reasons why the incidences are there, you know, to determine how many are caused by speed and how many is not caused by speed. Well, Mr. Zimmerman has gone through and found out that there's maybe 8 or 9 that are at the intersection. So we're spending $53,000 to look at 8 or 9 incidents. In addition, a number of those has nothing to do with speed, okay? They deal with people making the wrong turn, pulling out, you know, very few people, okay, go through 83 and Walker Road at a very high speed because, one, it's congested. You can't go that fast. You can't. Now, if you want to go 3 o'clock in the morning when nobody's around on 83 and Walker, I'm sure you can go 35, okay? But nobody goes through that intersection over 35. You can't. There's cars going 4 ways, they're turning, there's turn signals, people coming out of the landings, people are coming out of McDonald's, they're coming out of Walgreens. Nobody's going fast through that. It's not a speeding trap, all right? It's not a speeding trap. So, you know, you're spending money assuming it's a speeding, you know, it's speeding, but it's not. Just like Lake Road. You didn't do a study on Lake Road. You didn't. You know, you just don't. You know, why doesn't this city follow and do things right like the city of Avon? Why? Oh, is it because this is the way we don't do things around here, according to Mayor Zoka? You know, it's not. That's not a good answer. The answer is you got to comply with the law. All of you. You took an oath of office, uphold the charter and the codified ordinances. How many times have you violated that? How many? We know you did on the Avon Lake Animal Clinic. You ignored the master plan. So, you know, you need to do your job. And you just disdain anybody who comes up here and tries to educate you and explain things. You just totally blow them off.
Thank you, sir, for sharing. Anybody else would like to speak from the audience? Come on up. Oh, we've got several. Take your turn. Either one. Welcome.
William Zimmerman, beautiful Avon Lake. So as Mr. Phillips has stated, I found 9 out of those 46 that was actually in the intersection. So a camera overlooking the intersection is going to see a minimal amount of information. Did this really occur? Are we going to waste our money for that? People are rear-ending each other because it's winter and somebody's not paying attention close and short of the intersection. There was a hit and skip where the guy came out of the BP station, came south, hit somebody, pushed him into the McDonald's parking lot area entrance, and then sped away. So that's not going to pick it up if it's on this on the section in which the chief tried to explain when we were at the meeting. I think this is a waste of money, as always. These flock systems are nothing. They don't help. You're going to find out somebody went down the road. You're going to check their license plate. That's all you're doing. It's invasion of privacy is what it really is. I don't understand why we keep going down this silly path. My other question has to do with the fact that Mr. Arnold is recusing himself from vote tonight. I don't understand that. Has he recused himself every other time that this was to be voted? With Bram Hall or something like that? I don't know those figures, so I haven't had a chance to find them out. Because unfortunately, I'm the guy who has to check stuff. Because the city of Avon Lake, you guys won't give me $50,000 so that I can check things regularly, so that I know for sure that you're not lying, you're not doing your job, you're not making up some other false figures. Just like the traffic stuff. False figures that have nothing to do with anything. It's a waste of time and money because the chief wants a camera, or Mr. Koss wants to look like this great guy who's providing to get a camera. Just like in the mayor's minutes the other day, where you endorsed it after he had stated it, and then looked down the panel both ways and stared at Mr. Koss because he's pro temp until he endorsed it as well. And he can't get documents for years. This place is bad.
Thank you for sharing. Mr. Koss, I have a question because I really don't know, and maybe you don't know either, but do you know what the vantage point and how far the flock can actually see?
The chief addressed that last week. I can't recall off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody know here? Anybody remember that? Okay. Okay, anybody else would like to speak? Come on up. Give us your name and just your city.
Malachi with Avon Lake.
Thank you.
Is the Alps part of it? Is that not a question I can ask? It's not like specifically mentioned here.
Not on tonight's agenda.
Okay, that's fine. So in that case, I just wanted to to echo that I'd like to get some more information. I can't talk. The information as far as the accidents and what actually happened in the intersection, I found that to be really interesting. So I would like to know if there's more information about that, like if we can find out, try to evaluate the usefulness of the cameras as opposed to something that's just sitting there. My concern is just that, it's like when we're at home and you get Netflix and you get Amazon Prime and you get a bunch of different services and then your budget's a death by 1,000 cuts. And so it's kind of a little concerned about, as far as financially, as far as the city's concerned, spending on things that, even though it is infinitesimal in the entire budget, it is $50,000, it is $1,000 a month. Is there really justification to have this? And then the concern is if we have one, then will we have another and another? And then, so it's just kind of a cautionary, I'd just like to see more information and data, that this is really something that, what's the impact or the benefit? And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else want to come forward? Come on up. Just give us your name and the city that you live in.
My name's Garth Peterson. Live on 156 Curtis Drive, Avon Lake. I'm a Civic Crusader. Just a couple things I want to share with the community and TV or whatever. Basically, I earned an Ohio private detective certification and now have filed a criminal complaint police report with Avon Police about allegations that Spectrum committed fraud with its representation in our presence in the Avon store and associated corporate actions that we feel defrauded us.
Sir, it has to be on tonight's agenda. So if you have something that's not on tonight's agenda, it could be at the end of our meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was already jumped to that.
No, this is at the very beginning.
Okay.
It's for whatever's on tonight's agenda. So stay
Got a
here.
long way to go? Okay.
Stay here.
Stay tuned for further details. All right.
So you'll be back.
Okay, I'll
Come
be
on,
back. That's
yeah,
what
thank
MacArthur
you.
said.
Anybody else? Just come forward and give us your name, the city that you're from.
Neil Rush from Avon Lake.
Thanks, Neil.
I too had some concerns about the costs and it rolling into another, and concerned about the cost versus benefit, like the chief said that, you may want to get in a drone. Maybe a drone would be more cost effective of the use of the money versus the cameras. And I do understand the cameras are not necessarily going to get, it will capture what happens but it's also supposed to check for license plates for anybody fleeing up and down and through that area. So that's was just my concern there. And then, sometimes technology gets ahead of the laws, and there is some very good advice from the ACLU about these block systems. And I know that it was supposed to be stored for 30 days. I just want to make sure that those 30 days, all the information is destroyed and no way of getting into any kind of mass surveillance system, because block is, has over 2,000 cities across the country, and I just am concerned about our own privacy when it comes to these types of systems.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions from anybody in the audience? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on now to motions. Council, anybody have any additions or subtractions from tonight's motions? Seeing none, the very first motion, I move to permit Mr. Arnold to be excused from voting on ordinance number 25-15 pursuant to codified ordinance 220.19B. And in discussion, this is a conflict through Mr. Arnold's business with Bram Hall. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Yes? Yes, sir.
Yeah, just that Mr. Arnold has abstained from anything dealing with Bram Hall in the past.
Correct.
I just wanted to make that statement.
Thank you, Mr. Super. Appreciate it. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Mrs. Rossmarin, the roll.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Thank you. The next item has to do with legislation. Does council have any additions or corrections, deletions? Seeing none, Mrs. Rossmarin, the first reading, ordinance number 25-11.
An ordinance authorizing all actions necessary to accept the Northeast Ohio Public Energy Council 2025 Energized Community Grants and declaring an emergency.
Ms. Gentry.
I move for suspension of the rules requiring 3 readings.
She's getting emergency. 3 readings. Emergency. Tonight she doesn't have that.
Oh. I guess there's no-
Mrs.
that was my
Rossmarin?
mistake. That's my mistake.
Okay.
She doesn't, yeah, that's correct.
Okay, all right. Mrs. Rossmarin?
Okay, sorry about that.
The reason why for everybody out there, the reason why we stopped was that it's not indicated as suspension of the rule in our agenda, and it was apparently a typo. Thank you. Mrs. Rossmarin, to read the roll for suspension?
Well, no.
She's
we're-
not gonna do
She's
suspension?
not doing suspension. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
She could wait till the second
This
reading
one,
with second
yes,
reading.
This
Yes.
can go 2 readings.
2 readings.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was
Likewise for
kind of
the next
surprised by, yeah, okay.
Likewise for the next one.
Yeah, yeah.
I gave her something
Okay.
by
Okay.
mistake. So.
Okay, so we're going to start over again. So we've had it read. Ms. Gentry, in discussion?
Yeah, so annually, NOPEC, Northeast Ohio Public Energy Council, provides communities with funding and grants, and this is to allow the mayor to accept this grant this year. This year, we'll receive $67,390 to be spent towards energy efficiency. We also have funds available from 2023 and 2024. These have to be spent after 2 years. So we have time. Mr. Liskovic, do you have
Mr. Liskovic?
anything else to say about it?
Not a ton of other than it's
Yeah.
been a really good program allowing us to do some retrofits and get some other stuff done around the community.
Any further comments? Yes, Mr. Zuber?
Just that there was a motion to suspend the rule. We never voted. Motion was never withdrawn. Are we going to act on that motion or rescind the motion or?
Right. So we're going to have a withdrawal. You have to have a withdrawal of the motion.
I move to withdraw my previous motion for suspension.
Mrs. Rossmarin, the roll?
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Thank you, Mr. Zuber. We're going to move on to the next one, which is a resolution number 25-12. Mrs. Rossmarin, please read it by title only.
A resolution supporting the Ohio Municipal League's challenge to AT&T's tariff application at the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio and declaring an emergency.
Ms. Gentry.
Yes, this resolution was.
Ms. Gentry, you want to move for
I
suspension?
move.
This
Are
one
we
is-
suspending
yeah,
this one,
this one
Mr.
is-
Ebert?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so I move to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings.
Just gave it twice.
Thank you. Mrs. Rossmarin, the roll?
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Thank you. Ms. Gentry?
So this resolution is to support the Ohio Municipal League's challenge for AT&T. The request from AT&T was to have the cities be responsible for moving any of the buried, or,
You have to say I move for passage.
I thought this was discussion.
You said discussion.
No, I'm sorry. I said discussion, but I have to say I move for
Ooh,
passage.
Okay, I move for passage of Resolution 2512.
Thank you. Mrs. Rossmarin, the roll?
We have
Mrs. Fender?
discussion.
Yes.
Well, are you
Discussion
finished,
first.
are you finished with discussion? Because I think she wanted to
Okay,
discuss
okay,
after
then-
the motion.
Okay, now you can have discussion.
Okay,
Do you understand what is
this
happening
is
here?
a mess. This is just a mess, that's all. So this is for the Ohio Municipal League Challenge from AT&T. They wanted the cities responsible for moving any of the utilities that are in public spaces. Mr. Ebert, was there anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, they withdrew their application, but the Ohio Municipal League is going forward to try to oppose this publicly, is because it can be all refiled by AT&T or any other, utility. And it affects cities dramatically as far as AT&T, as far as the construction to pay for those type of moving those poles and situation. Could be First Energy, could be Columbia Gas, et cetera. So we are going forward. We've added that one section as far as we've already withdrawn their application, but we are proceeding with the Ohio Municipal League is going forward with this.
Any further discussion? Seeing none? Mrs. Rossmarin?
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Thank you, it has passed. Resolution number 25-13. Mrs. Rossmarin, read by title only.
A resolution authorizing the Director of Finance to dispose of certain surplus city property no longer needed for public use by internet auction from February 1st through December 31st, 2025, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Zuber.
I move for the suspension of the council rule requiring 3 readings.
Thank you. Mrs. Rossmarin?
Mrs. Fenderbosh? Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Thank you. Mr. Zuber?
I move for passage of resolution number 2513.
Discussion.
As we had discussed at the collective committee meeting last week, this is authorize the finance director to advertise on GovDeals, PropertyRoom.com, and also PublicSurplus.com for any items that we need to get rid of as determined by her.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Ross Marin, the roll.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Thank you. It has passed. Mrs. Ross Marin, read by title only, resolution number 25-14.
A resolution authorizing the Director of Finance to participate in various cooperative purchasing programs and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Zuber.
I move for the suspension of the council rule requiring 3 readings.
Thank you. Mrs. Ross Marin?
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Thank you. It has passed. Mrs. Ross Marin, read by title only. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir. Oh, Mr. Zuber.
I move for passage of resolution number 2514.
Mr. Zuber.
This is what the city uses as cooperative purchasing on several different items that we can buy rather than going out for bid. These are already things that have been bidded by several different agencies like the Ohio Department of Transportation, General Services Administration, so that we don't have to go out for bid for these particular items. We could just go and purchase them. They've basically already been out for bid by these other entities of the government, and we attach onto that. We have to pass this every calendar year so that we can participate in these different programs.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Mrs. Ross Marin, the roll.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Thank you. It is passed. Mrs. Ross Marin, read by title only, ordinance number 25-15.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to appropriate funds for the personal services agreement with Bromhall Engineering and Surveying Company and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Zuber.
I move for the suspension of the council rule requiring 3 readings.
Thank you. Mrs. Ross Marin, the roll.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
No.
Mr. Smith?
No.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
It has passed. Mr. Zuber.
I move for passage of ordinance number 2515.
Mr. Zuber.
We had appointed Chris Howard of Bramhall Engineering and Surveying.
No, we had,
Yes.
you had 2 no's. I'm sorry. Do we have
Yeah,
2?
that's, we only have 2 no's, but we had, it wasn't 5.
Oh, okay. Hang on just a second, please. We have
2
6 people here. We had 2 no's
Right.
and 4
You have-
yeses.
You have to have 5.
Gotta be 5 then.
Oh, you have to have 5 yeses for suspension of the rule?
Yes.
Okay, but he can still go through. It doesn't need to have a passage tonight, but he needs to go through and read it still. Okay.
Point of
Correct.
order. We're not having
Good. So we're not gonna
correspondence
have
or
orders.
conversation
Thank
with
you.
the audience.
So I'm talking to my law director here, so we're going to have, it's not suspension of the rules tonight, Mr. Zuber, but if you could go ahead and have discussion of ordinance number 25-14.
This is the first reading of ordinance 2515. As I had stated, or was in the process of stating, we have hired Bramhall Engineering, specifically Chris Howard, as our city engineer. We have appointed him, and this is just the companion piece of legislation so that we may be able to pay him for the services that we appointed him to perform.
Thank
Not
you.
to exceed $150,000.
Any further discussion? Yes, sir, Mr. Shamir?
As I mentioned in the CCM, this 150,000, it is capped, but is it to continue all the way through 2025? Because in 2024, we paid Mr. Howard or Bramhall 270,000. So to have these things come up as an emergency declaration when Mr. Howard has been providing service for the city now for over a year, and we don't have the planning or the pre-planning to have this either move through the system with 3 readings is kind of unacceptable. I mean, this requires planning, and we should also be looking at bringing an engineering manager and an engineering department into the city.
Mr. Smith? Thank you,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir.
I look at it from the standpoint of there needs to be a plan in place for the engineering services to be done. The charter calls for an engineer, and I'd like to have a better idea of what that plan is going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Liskovic, I'm not going to be putting you on the spot, but I am going to be sending this to you to have a discussion with Mr. Mayor on,
Yes,
so that we can have answers to our council
absolutely.
on this. Thank you, sir. Any further discussion? Okay, we're going to move on then to ordinance number 25-16. Mrs. Rossmarin, please read by title only.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a 4-year personal services agreement with Flock Incorporated for the Flock Safety Platform and Flock Safety Video Products and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Cos.
Thank you. I move to suspend the council rule requiring 3 readings.
Mrs. Rossmarin, the roll.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Cos?
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Thank you. It has passed. Mr. Cos.
Yeah, thank you. This is an item that came out of the public safety.
I move for
Oh,
passage.
I'm sorry. I move for passage of ordinance number 25-16.
In discussion.
In discussion. This is an item that came out of the Public Safety and Health Committee meeting with a 3-0 vote. Essentially, this is a 4-year contract with Flock Cameras, the Flock Safety Platform, to have 2 cameras at the intersection of Walker Road and State Route 83, and 2 at the intersection of Lear Road and Walker Road. The document that is at everyone's desk has a different amount on it than what the committee passed at our last meeting. The original contract called for $53,000 to be the cost. That has been revised down, which is always better than the other way. And the new cost is $49,918.92. And this cost would be split over 4 years evenly, and each year would be $12,479.53. I haven't broken it down because the numbers changed. It's not a round number like the 53, but essentially it used to be about $1,000 per intersection, $500 per camera per month. So just that comes down a little bit from that, but that's kind of the basic number. Chief Molnar gave a presentation at this, at the Safety Committee meeting, and also at the CCM last week. He answered questions. These cameras will be helpful in the police department's investigations for car accidents, for other incidents that take place going through that intersection. It's not just the car accidents in the intersection. It could be a fleeing suspect where they have to identify which way that car is traveling. The chief went over a number of different things that this could be used for, and it's an advance in policing that a lot of communities are going to. I just want to remind the public that these are not license plate readers like the ones that we have placed at the entry and exit locations throughout the city. These are essentially sort of a live stream type of thing where we can access the footage as needed when needed. There will be a policy put in place similar to what the internal policy is for access to this with the other Flock cameras, so this will be added to that. And it has been mentioned by a resident here tonight, and just a reminder that there's a 30-day retention on this as well, too. Again, this is something that the police department is looking at advances for these intersections where we know that there are issues, and this will be helpful in their investigations and helping them, monitor the safety of the city.
Thank you. Any further discussion by anyone? Yes, Mr. Smith?
Thank you. In my other life as an attorney, I've run into several cases where these type of cameras have been very, very helpful, particularly to defendants in cases who are accused of various crimes. I also find that they are been helpful in terms of accident reconstruction in areas. I think it's a safety issue that it is helpful with. I think it helps both the public as well as the police. I don't think it's a one-sided situation. The important thing for the public to know is that they only are there for, it's only up for 30 days. And if you need to get a copy of something that's happened during that time frame, you need to make sure to get to the police department and ask for it. So I see it as very helpful for both the public and for the safety forces. And I support this very much. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Anybody else? Yes, Ms. Gentry.
I just wanted to make sure the public is aware that these cameras are not capturing speed.
Did I say?
No, you did not. I just wanted
okay.
to, nobody said anything. I just wanted to make sure that people knew that it's not a speed camera.
But
Thank you.
I've had them where people have been accused of going through red lights. I've had them where people have accidents that they want to look at the cameras. But it is important to understand that they only are there for 30 days, which I think is important. And but it is important to know that if you want to get it, you got to get in and ask for it. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on council? Mr. Zuber?
Just a comment, I would echo what Mr. Smith said. I think that these are a good addition for our police department. This is something that as we get further along and start reviewing better and more technology, I think it's only going to enhance what our police department can do that will only benefit our residents.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Okay, Mrs. Ross Marin, the roll.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Ross Marin, read resolution number 25-17.
A resolution to approve the application made by ABK Limited to have certain land owned by it designated as being located within an agricultural district and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. This is the first reading. There will be 3 readings. There's also going to be a public hearing on February the 10th. In the audience tonight is Mr. Klingshirn, Lee Klingshirn, who owns the properties in this resolution and in the next one. And Mr. Klingshirn owns what I'm going to call a heritage property because it's part of Avon Lake's history having vineyards, right? And every 5 years, Mr. Klingshirn needs to come before this body to have that parcel designation, that zoning designation re-upped. And it's also reported to the county. So in this particular one, this is a resolution that is for part of the parcels. And there are 4 parcels that are all together, and 2 are north of Weber Road and 2 are south of Weber Road. And we will be discussing it again in next week and the week after and the week after and the week after for 3 weeks. Part of what the county requires is that there not only be a description of the properties and their acreage, but also if there's commerce there, is there profit from that commerce? And he has shown that that is the case. He has met what the county requires and he has met what the city requires to continue. And I'm turning my pages to a specific parcel that I want to share with you. And this one is for ABK, and ABK actually has over 20 acres that are part of it. And the next one is very similar to this one. Are there any questions in this process or the procedure that we're going to be following? It's going to be up for 3 readings. It's going to be a public hearing next week. The applicant does not need to be at the public hearing. The public will be here. The address for this one is 33050 Weber Road. The one parcel is 19.74 acres. The other parcel is 1.95. It's actually on the north side of Weber Road. Seeing no questions. Okay, we will go on then. Mrs. Ross Marin, please read resolution number 25-18.
A resolution to approve the application made by LNK Limited to have certain land owned by it designated as being located within an agricultural district and declaring an emergency.
Again, this is the first reading for the exact same thing. It's just that there are two separate titles for this business. In Avon Lake, the agricultural zoning is for use, and it is underneath the same use. They're making wine, and it is agricultural. Again, there will be 3 readings. The public hearing will be February the 10th. Are there any questions on this one? Seeing none, then we will move along to ordinance number 25-19. Mrs. Rosmarin, please read by title only.
An ordinance to make appropriations for the current year and other expenditures of the City of Avon Lake for the fiscal year 2025 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Mr. Zuber.
I move first reading of ordinance number 2519.
Discussion.
As we had talked about at the CCM last week, and we've had several months of discussions about the budget, this is the first reading. We'll have more discussion on this next week at the Finance Committee meeting. I'm looking probably at starting the Finance Committee meeting at 5:30 on Monday, so that we have plenty of time for this and other items moving forward on it. I have met with the Finance Director last week, and I will be meeting with her again this week to go over mainly the capital budget and the finalized, all that, so hopefully we can move quickly through that at the Finance Committee meeting on the 3rd next week. So this is the first reading. There will probably be changes. I think there may be some things that further discussion as we move forward in the process. But I think that probably next week at the Finance Committee meeting, we'll have some more direct numbers that the Finance Director will be able to bring forward based on property tax and income tax, some of those different things that we've had discussions about already. And that's the reasoning behind not passing the budget prior to the beginning of the year, is we wanted to get, especially the property tax numbers.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Zuber on the process moving forward? Would you like to add anything to what he had to say tonight?
Yes, I would like to say that we've been able to successfully close 2024 and know what is coming forward, which has helped with the budget process. So therefore, we look forward to finalizing that budget.
That's good news. Very good. Thank you so much for bringing us up to date. Okay, we're going to move along then to resolution number 2520. Mr. Zuber. Oh, I'm sorry. Mrs. Ross Marin, going to read by title only.
A resolution submitted in question of the renewal of a tax levy for the purpose of providing for the current expenses of the City of Avon Lake under Ohio Revised Code, Section 5705.19A, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Zuber.
I move for the suspension of the council rule requiring 3 readings.
Thank you. Mrs. Ross Marin. The roll.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes,
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Thank you. It's passed. Mr. Zuber.
I move for passage of resolution number 2520.
In discussion.
As I had stated in my report, we had had discussions on this. It's good that we got the information back from the county so that we could have it at this regular meeting. This has to be submitted to the Board of Elections by February 5th, just like the petitions for people that are running for office. That is the cutoff date for that. This is the renewal of a tax levy that's been around for many years. The 30 years that I've been on council, this is $23 for every $100,000 worth of appraised value. Currently, it brings in $1,099,000. Like I said, just under $1.1 million. That number would stay the same as it is a renewal levy.
Any further discussion from anyone about this topic? Seeing none, Mrs. Rossmarin, the roll.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Thank you, it has passed. Mrs. Rossmarin, read by title only, ordinance number 25-21.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to take all actions necessary to accept the Nature Works grant from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Mr. Shamir?
I move for the suspension of the council rule for 3 readings of ordinance number 25-21, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to take all actions necessary to accept the Nature's Work grant from ODNR and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. So you move for suspension of the rule.
I
Mrs.
move for
Rossmarin?
suspension of rule.
Mrs. Rossmarin?
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Shamir?
I move for passage of ordinance number 25-21.
Mrs. Rossmarin? Yes, Mr. Smith?
Just so the record's clear, it's a resolution that we're passing, not an ordinance.
Sorry,
That's all right.
I was told to switch it to ordinance.
that's what I had noted.
One says
It said
resolution, one
there.
says
You told me
ordinance.
I
to say
had
ordinance.
got a note for ordinance, so I put it down as ordinance.
But the document is a resolution.
It's fine.
Okay,
Mine
so-
says resolution.
So it should say resolution then, Mr. Smith?
That's what I think.
Yes, it
So
is a
should
resolution.
we reread it, or?
No, just a moment.
If I could,
Please.
any type of thing when you're applying for a grant, it's a resolution, so that's, yes. No, you don't have to reread it because it is titled Resolution 25.
Well,
And I
it
read it as a
isn't.
resolution.
That's fine, it is.
So,
Yeah.
so if I could go
Sorry.
back, so everybody understands, in our agenda, we have ordinance, but in the actual resolution, it says
Says resolution.
resolution. So Mrs. Rossmarin, could you read by title only so we have a record of it?
I
A
did
resolution?
read it, but I'll do it again.
Thank you, I would appreciate that, thank you.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to take all actions necessary to accept the Nature Works grant from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Shamir, you'd like to have passage now.
I move for the passage of resolution number 25-21.
Thank you, Mrs. Rossmarin. The roll call.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Discussion.
We're gonna have discussion? I thought you already had it. No?
Is there anyone else?
Discussion? Any further discussion? Okay, Mrs. Rossmarin?
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Thank you. It too has passed. Okay, it's been an interesting evening tonight. Yes. Okay, public input. This is the time for any topic that you want to talk about, and you have 5 minutes, and you'll be speaking to the chair. Just introduce yourself and the city that you're from. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Gerald Phillips, Avon Lake, concerned citizen. For all those citizens watching this program, I ask that you watch 6 other programs that we have on ALC TV. One about the Brownfield Committee, one about the TIF, one about the implosion, one about the interim development agreement, and we have 2 called Local Government Responsibility, Part 1 and Part 2, that deals with 5 qualities that council people and public officials should have: openness in government, impartiality, honesty, integrity, and transparency. You all were given the infamous appraisal that you didn't know about. But Todd Davis knew about it on October 25th, 2023. He talked with ALERG, according to his billing records. But he didn't present it when you voted on the interim development agreement. So I want you to look at the second page, okay? And I'm going to read, it's in the last paragraph, okay? Starts with the second sentence. This appraisal is made upon a hypothetical condition that the underlying soil of the subject site is free of any hazardous waste. That means that property is clean, no problems, has a clean bill of health. Go to the next page. $2.37 million for that property, clean. No hazards, no waste. Did Todd Davis tell you that? Did you know that when you voted on it? How about the interim development agreement? Letter of intent, purchase price, $15 million. $15 million. Todd Davis knew it. You voted on this agreement based on $15 million. It's only worth 2.37. Todd Davis was asked if there was an appraisal. He said no. Even Burns-Ochner didn't disclose there was an appraisal. I've indicated that I believe that that's fraud. He concealed a known fact. So let's look at 29-21-13, falsification. No person shall knowingly make a false statement. Goes on about under oath is the second. The statement is made in an official proceeding. Todd Davis made that statement in an official proceeding right before you. All right? Section, that's A1. A3 says the statement is made with the purpose to mislead a public official in performing the public official's official functions. That's you. You voted on that. That's your function. That's your duty. He misled you. He committed a fraud. He committed a fraud. I want Todd Davis fired. I want the law director to bring a taxpayer suit to invalidate that interim development agreement. It was procured by fraud. Now let's talk about other problems. 2 disorderly conduct tickets, okay? One I signed. The other one I didn't sign, but you know what? My signature's on it. I never received it. Okay? Are we going to have an investigation by the police department? Of course, we can't do that because the mayor, who already in his mayor's minutes thinks I'm a radical, we're not going to get an investigation for tampering with evidence, tampering with records, obstructing official business. So when Mr. Zimmerman talks about corruption, okay, I think those 2 events are corruption. Fraud's a corruption. Violated 2921.13. It's a criminal statute. Tampering with evidence. You want that section too? I can give you that section. Obstructing business, 2921.31. Tampering with records, 2913.42. Tampering with evidence, 2912.12. So when Paul Orlowski gets up here and says, oh, you know, people are just throwing out corruption. Well, Paul, you were an investigative reporter. You stuck a mic in a lot of people's faces, okay? Come and look at the facts. These are facts, okay? 2 different tickets.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else would like to come forward tonight?
Well, that's a tough act to follow.
Just give us your name again and where
Greg
you're from.
Peterson, Avon Lake, 156 Curtis. As I was mentioning before,
You might want to start over.
okay. A couple poignant suggestions to the community in that respect. I want to share a couple items. As a civic crusader, I earned a Ohio private detective certification, and now filed a criminal complaint against Spectrum of the Avon Police about allegations that they committed fraud with representation in our presence at the Avon store and associated corporate actions that we feel defrauded us near the felony threshold level. That's in process. Stay tuned for further details on that. I find it interesting that if other people have had a similar experience with Spectrum or any of these other outfits, last year Amy was helpful with looking at why Verizon lied to us about why there was an outage. In January, I attended a meeting on that part, so I find it interesting that we seem to have a problem with AT&T and their tariff thing, and Spectrum with stuff they do, and Verizon. I don't trust any of them. So, be an aware citizen, and basically, if you see something, say something in that. So, if people want to contact me, 56 Curtis Drive. If you got proof that you've been feeling that you've had that happen to you as well. The other thing with respect to not only Spectrum and that, I've run across imminent danger situations with them in other municipalities. I made the mistake of not calling 911. I thought I could handle it with their corporate. They don't care. That's something that's become increasingly evident. So that was something, if you see something and you think it's an imminent danger or whatever, whether it be Spectrum or any other contractor in the city, then call 911 and let them deal with it. The other thing on another issue, we just had a delivery within Avon Lake that Postal Service delivered. It was a thing from Amazon Pharmacy. Funny thing, when it got there, the package was empty. The post office had labeled it as opened and empty. So if you're getting your prescriptions via Amazon Pharmacy or anything else that has a big sign that says "Steal Me," I do not personally use them or whatever, and I'm not meaning to pick on Amazon per se, but I just find it interesting that that's how that whole thing played. And if you're getting your prescriptions, the other issue I would suggest is just make sure if they're coming in the mail, it's secure. And if you're going to worry about it being freezable or something, same deal. Just be aware that there's caveats to all this kind of stuff in that particular respect. Let's see what else I had. I think that was pretty much it. There's no action necessary by Avon Lake Police with respect to the packages and that. It could have happened any place in the contractor supply chain with Postal Service or Amazon or whatever. So short of a dye package in the book or something like that, like a bank thing or GPS, I don't know how widespread that is in the area, but it just sort of shocked me. It's like, wait a minute, this one's empty. It's like, okay. And it wasn't at the point of delivery. It was through the Postal Service and their experiences in that respect. So other than that, like I say, if people have concerns about the services that we receive from some of these vendors and that, I'm looking to establish a pattern of possible criminal behavior with Spectrum and some of these other outfits. I'd be more than happy to listen to anybody that wants to mail me something at 156 Curtis Drive and try to help you through that as a private detective certification. So that's my spiel, and hope that's been helpful to the community. And as a civic crusader in that, I pride myself on being aware of what's going on in that respect and trying to help others. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Anybody else in the audience would like to speak on any topic? On any topic? Come on up. Your name and your city.
William Zimmerman, beautiful Avon Lake. I am a concerned citizen, as Mr. Phillips says. We've made 6 episodes. We're trying to educate the public. As Mr. Phillips says, he's concerned with corruption. Tickets that, one, he signed, the second, he was never issued, but somehow, some way, his signature's on that. That sounds like corruption. Doctoring evidence. It's a 3rd-degree felony. Somebody needs to be looking at this stuff in our police department. Is that coming from the mayor to the chief and on down? Because I've already told you about an instance where I had a meeting with the chief, and yet the chief didn't take it. He had one of his subordinates take it. And then after that, wasting of my 10 minutes, I went back home, called the chief, and the chief was there. He wasn't on vacation, like I was told. They lie. They cheat. I believe they probably steal. I wouldn't be surprised. Is that necessary? You know that's not acceptable. You know it's not.
I know. Continue, sir. We need to pay attention to our audience. Thank you.
It's a sad situation in this city. You're elected officials to represent the citizens of the city. And yet you jerk around down there at the end saying whatever he wants, whenever he wants. Total disrespect to the citizens of the city. He's full of fraud over here. He doesn't want to do anything that's right. A Marine who took an oath can't keep his oath. Ongoing issues repeatedly. But let's get some more flock cameras, because that's important. Just like you guys backing up the mayor. When you gave your little 30-second endorsement and then look down to him because he's pro temp and you want him to endorse it too. Because everybody's behind the mayor. And I'm sure once all this, oh, by the way, I forgot. Great news. We're not going to have mediation with the Ohio Supreme Court. We're going to trial. I can't wait. Because there'll be criminal charges that come out eventually. And I believe part of you up here will be filed. Won't be hesitation. You guys think you're smarter than everybody else, and you're not. Brownfield Committee isn't smarter than everybody else. Zach Arnold's not smarter than everybody else. So we'll be putting out more shows about corruption in our city. Because the citizens deserve to be included in the information that we gather. But you won't give me 50,000 so I can keep gathering. Because as the watchdog, I just get to do it on my own, which is okay. I'm trying to be fair about it. At some point, citizens of Avon Lake, you'll get to see and hear everything. And there won't be any second guessing. There won't be any people saying, no, that's not right. They can't be doing this. Because as concerned citizens, we're going to have it all the way to the bottom. Some of them are going to jail.
Thank you. Anybody else want to come forward on any other topic? No? All right. Any miscellaneous business and announcements from anyone? Yes, sir. Mr. Shamir.
There will be a Ward 1 meeting tomorrow evening at 5:30 at the library. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? The only announcement I want to make is what has already been stated. Mr. Zuper will be right with you in a moment, and that is that anyone who is wanting to turn in their petitions for at-large position, there's 3 positions that are on the ballot this year. In November, there will not be a primary, but you need to have at least 50 signatures, and those petitions are then turned in to the Board of Elections by February the 5th. Mr. Zuber.
I would just like to go on the record and state that I think Zach Arnold is a smart man.
Amen to that. Anybody else on any topic? Seeing none, we are now going to adjourn tonight's meeting. Thank you.
So moved. Need a vote?
Thank you. Oh, we're going to vote. Sorry.
Mrs. Fenderbosh,
Yes.
Ms. Gentry.
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Zuber,
Yes.
Mr. Arnold.
Yes.
Thank you. Now we're adjourned. Thank you.